Random House Audio presents The Sound of Sleigh Bells by Cindy Woodsmall. Read for you by Cassandra Campbell. Chapter 1. The aroma of fresh-baked bread, shepherd's pie, and steamed vegetables filled Lizzie's house, mingling with the sweet smell of baked desserts. In the hearth, a bank of embers kept a small fire burning, removing the nip that clung to the early April air. The noise of conversations rose and fell around Lizzie's kitchen table as her brother and his large family talked easily throughout the meal. His grown and almost grown children filled the sides of her 14-foot table, and his grandchildren sat in their mother's laps or in high chairs. Nearly 4 decades ago, her oldest brother had put effort into finding an Amish bride. When Stephen found the right girl, he married her. He'd handled life well, and the fruit of it fed her soul. Lizzie had focused on her business and never married. She didn't regret her choices, not for herself. But she'd crawl on her hands and knees the rest of her days to keep her niece from the same fate. Beth was like a daughter to Lizzie. Not long after the family's dry goods store passed to Lizzie, Beth graduated from the 8th grade and started working beside her. Soon she moved in with Lizzie, and they shared the 1-bedroom apartment above the shop. When Lizzie had this house built a few years ago, her niece had stayed above Hertzler's dry goods. Lizzie studied the young beauty as she answered her family's endless questions about her decisions in the middleman role between the Amish who made goods and the various Englishers stores who wanted those goods. That was her Beth. Answer what was asked, do what was right, always be polite, offer to help before it was needed, and never let anyone see the grief that hadn't yet let go of her. Beth had banned even Lizzie from looking into the heartache that held her hostage. The 1-year anniversary of Henry's death had come and gone without any sign from Beth that she might lay aside her mourning, so Lizzie had taken action. She'd prepared this huge meal and planned a social for the afternoon. Maybe all Beth needed was a loving, gentle nudge. If not, Lizzie had a backup plan, one Beth would not appreciate. Over the din of conversations, the sounds of horses and buggies arriving and the voices of young people drifted through the kitchen window, causing Beth to look at her. Lizzie placed her forearms on the table. I've invited the young singles of the community for an evening of outdoor games, desserts, and a bonfire when the sun goes down. 2 of Beth's single younger sisters, Fanny and Susie, glowed at the idea. With grace and gentleness, Beth turned to her ma'am and asked if she would need help planting this year's garden. It didn't seem to bother Beth that 5 of her sisters had married before her, and 3 of them were younger than she was. All but the most recently wed had children. Lizzie knew what awaited Beth if she didn't find someone: awkward and never-ending loneliness. Maybe she didn't recognize that. It wasn't until Henry came into Beth's life that she even seemed to notice that single men existed. Within a year of meeting, they were making plans to marry. Now, in an Amish community of dresses in rich, solid hues, Beth wore black. Through a window, Lizzie saw the young men bring their rigs to a halt. The drivers as well as the passengers got out of the carriages. The girls soon huddled in groups, talking feverishly, while the guys went into the barn, pulled 2 wagons with plenty of hay into the field, and tied their horses to them. It was far easier to leave the animals harnessed and grazing on hay than to have to hitch a horse to its buggy in the dark. The young people knew the routine. They would remain outside playing volleyball, horseshoes, or whatever else suited them until after the sun went down. Then they'd come inside for desserts and hot chocolate or coffee before riding in wagons to the field where they'd start a bonfire. Fanny and Susie rose and began clearing the table. Beth went to the dessert counter and picked out a pie. She set it on the table beside her dad, cut a slice, and placed it on his plate. Then she slid a piece onto her ma'am's plate before passing the pie to her brother Emmanuel. She took her seat next to her mother, still chatting about the upcoming spring planting. Lizzie hoped her brother saw what she did, a daughter who continued to shun all possibility of finding new love. Beth clung to the past as if she might wake one day to find her burning desires had changed it. Fanny began gathering glasses that still held trace amounts of lemonade. "You've got to join us this time, Bethy. It's been too long." Flatware stopped clinking against the plates as all eyes turned to Beth. Susie tugged on her sleeve. "Please, everyone misses you." Beth poked at the meal she'd barely touched, as if she might scoop a forkful of the cold food and eat it. "Not this time. Dengue." "See, Beth," Lizzie said, "every person here knows you should be out socializing again. Everyone except you." Beth's face grew taut, and she stood and removed the small stack of plates from Fanny's hands. "Go on. I'll do these." Fanny glanced to her dad. He nodded. "Why don't you all finish up and go on out? Emmanuel and Ira, do you mind helping set up the volleyball nets?" Emmanuel wiped his mouth on a cloth napkin. "We can do that." Chairs screeched against the wood floor as most of the brood stood. Fanny and Susie bolted for the door. Two more of Beth's sisters and two sisters-in-law went to the sink, taking turns rinsing the hands and faces of their little ones before they all went outside. Lizzie longed to see Beth in colored dresses, wearing a smile that radiated from her soul. Instead, Beth pasted on smiles, fooling most of those around her into thinking her heart continued to mend. But her quieter, more stoic behavior said things no one else seemed to hear. Lizzie heard, and she shared her concerns with Beth's dad, Stephen. Beth took a stack of dishes to the sink and flicked on the water. "You can leave that for now," Stephen said. She turned off the water and remained with her back to them. Beth's ma'am glanced at Lizzie as she ran her finger down a tall glass of lemonade. "Beth, honey," Beth turned. "I'm fine, ma'am." Stephen got up and piled more plates together. "Of course you are. And I'll throw my favorite pie at anyone who says otherwise." He stuck his finger into his half-eaten piece of chocolate pie, placed it in his mouth, and winked at Beth. She smiled, an expression that probably looked real to her dad, but reminded Lizzie of fine silk flowers, only beautiful to those who aren't gardeners. "Beth, sweetheart," Stephen said, "you know how me and your ma'am feel. We love you. It's no secret that you're different from our other girls. You've always had more of a head for business than a heart to find a beau. But now, well, we just want to make sure you're doing okay. Since you don't live with us, that's a bit hard to know sometimes." He set the dirty dishes beside the already full sink before he rinsed his hands and dried them. "Officially, your period of mourning was over nearly 6 months ago, but you haven't joined the young people for a single event. You've not left the store for your usual buying trips. You eat half of what you should. You continue to wear black. And those are things a stranger would notice." I could plan a buying and selling trip. It'll take me most of the summer to get completely organized for it, but I can be ready by August. I know I should have sooner, but Lizzie hoped Stephen didn't fall for the diversion tactic Beth had just thrown his way. But since Beth was listening to him without getting defensive, Lizzie wouldn't interfere. "Good. If that's where you feel like beginning, I'm glad to hear it. I know the community will be too, because without you they can't sell near as many of their goods." He walked to the table, took a seat, and motioned for Beth. She moved to the chair beside him. "But other people's financial needs are not what this is about. Tell me something good and hopeful about you. Something I'll know in my...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?